This is very important to remember that. And when we talk about for 1994, after the Oslo Agreement, the textbook were transferred to the Palestinian National Authority, but the Egyptian and the Jordanian textbook were still used in Palestinian school for some time until the Palestinians in their own textbook. 1994-2000, the Palestinians began to put some of the material about Palestine in textbook, but they started to produce their own textbook. Just the process starting in 2000. 2008, Palestinian textbook began produced. In 2000, they have been used almost all Palestinian schools in the West Bank, in Gaza, in East Jerusalem. And the question, why East Jerusalem, although it was controlled by the Israel using the Palestinian textbook? So I will mention this. This is maybe one of the reasons they are starting to deal with it. So I will talk about the first period that they writing the textbook and how this textbook were designed. The Palestinian textbook started, as I mentioned, 2000, 2017. This is the first period of the textbook, but it was after Oslo process, which the people there, they're writing the textbook, were really thinking about two states for two nations, living side by side, peace with the neighbors and not the enemy. He's a neighbor. Israel recognized the Israeli state as a state, and all this was very optimistic thought. So this is how they wrote their own textbook since 2000 until 2007. This textbook were to strengthen the Palestinian identity of the people in Palestine. Finally, we have a textbook. So finally, we have our identity, and we have to put it in the textbook. The textbook differentiate between Jewish and Zionist, that the conflict being with the Zionist movement and ideology, and not with Judaism. The textbook oppose or disagree with the Zionism thought and the Zionist movement, which does not recognize the right of the Palestinian people to their land and their access as a nation. And a textbook include information about Judaism as a religion and the Jews as a religion, and because Islam is respect all religions, so we have to mention what's going on with Judaism and to give this part in our curriculum. Zionist curriculum, Zionist colonialism is a continuation of European colonialism, imperialism. This is how they write, and their problem was the Zionist movement and not the Jews or Israel. There are no stereotypical or racist images of Jews or Israelis in textbooks, and Israel as state is recognized in the map in Palestinian textbook in this time. And I will show you how it was. It was like this: the people that speak Arabic here, and many of the audience may be Arab themselves. So Israel, it's written here. Israel, it's written here. So we have a map, and the map recognizes the state of Israel. So Israel in the map. So we recognize, although they didn't write very chapters about it, but still they mentioned it and they recognize it. How was the reaction of the motivation of the Israeli policy toward these textbooks, which were agreement, control and censorship of the textbook? And there was indirect censorship for the Palestinian National Authority, but direct censorship for the textbook into East Jerusalem. And the other thing was lack of recognition of the Palestinian native, and this is how they did it. So every book was entered from the Palestinian National Authority to Jerusalem. They were taking the stamp and the flag and everything, and they make it empty, or they are deleting the whole chapters, when they teach about their identity and their the Palestinian identity and everything. So you have here a chapter which was 8 pages about the Palestinian cause. So everything was coming to the student white pages. So they deleted because they didn't like the content. So the reaction, and this is the second period of that I will talk about it for writing the textbook, was a reaction to the Palestinian textbook. Changing the textbook, the reaction and the motivation was from the Palestinian textbook. Let's have a new text and let's continue having a war and conflict during also the textbooks and using this tool, which I mentioned before. This is the study that this tool is a very, very important and power tool to update our textbooks and to write their own narrative and history, and also to develop and promote social change in gender issues, diversities in the Palestinian society, and to socialize a student to their nation and social values. And the last one was to integrate global citizenship and combine it with social and emotional learning. So if we are doing now a new textbook, we have to deal with Western values, which is the global values, social and emotional learning, and in the time or in beside that we are mentioning our identity too. So in one of the interview that I did, one of the member of the curricula, the department, he mentioned the idea of changing the textbook is not new. It took a few years of thought and this discussion with many members of the Ministry of Education. The Palestinians have a right to change, correct, and add to their textbook. In the year of 2018, the new textbook were distributed in some of the schools. We made correction to them, and in 2018, we distribute the textbook in all the schools that belong to us, and the West Bank and Gaza and East Jerusalem. And in these textbooks, we integrate global citizenship, and here he talked about social and emotional learning. Since 2018, the textbooks were like this. So the self-image, again, the purpose was to strengthen the Palestinian identity of the people in Palestine, but how they did it? First of all, the Palestinian education system decided to change its textbook and to present Israel just as an occupier. So no peace, no agreement, occupier. No racism in textbook, but there is a selection of facts. Textbook is do not include information about Judaism or religion, but include Jews as a religion community in historical Palestine. No maps in Palestinian textbook include Israel as a state or Quran Hebrew names. No discussions of the Holocaust in the textbook of the Palestinian Authority, either in the old textbook or in the new textbook. And why presenting the context of self-perception and in intercultural relation, the textbook emphasizes social and emotional learning, and I will show how. The change in the textbook, this is what the cover of the first period of the textbook, but this cover is emphasize the identity, self-identity. You can see here, okay, if you can take the symbol of the Palestinian name or the flag, but the flag in the whole text. So the whole textbook in Palestine is in the same color, no matter which age, no matter the color of the Palestinian flag. Also, they start to mention inside the book very, very self-identity of the Palestinians. So this is how the colonial settlement in Palestine, this is how our case, the refugees are starting, and they are accused here Israel. And when I go through the textbook and look to the social and emotional learning in the analysis of textbook, appeared through which children and adults understand and manage emotion, set and achieve positive goals, feel and shows empathy for other, establishing the maintain positive relationship and make responsible decisions, And if we give knowledge or skill and attitude to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintaining supportive relationship, and make responsible and caring decisions. And here you can see self-awareness, for example, how they talk about it in the textbook. They were talking about identity, so how they bring this picture or other picture, and they said in the term of self-awareness, their textbook aim to strengthen students' sense of identity. Furthermore, the Palestinian society promote values such as equality, human rights, and respect for others, a spirit of diversity. And the diversity, you can see that people here, this is, but if you are looking aware that everyone, this is Palestinian, maybe Falah and the God, but we have black people, we have white people, we have men, we have women, we have everything. So it's also equality, but also is a diversity. Social awareness, different background. So they put these photos, for example, you have black, white, blonde. Social awareness involve the ability and to understand and emphasize with other, particularly with people from different background than one's own. And when they mention social awareness, respect of religion, they put many photos like this. The text has emphasized the inclusion of Christians in Palestinian society. So in the old textbook, we don't see many churches, many. So they talk about Palestinians as a Muslim nation, but here we can see that we have the Christian, and they have a very, very big chapters and emphasize and focus in the textbook that we are Palestinian, but we are respect the diversity and the religion. There are images of both mosques and churches, and discussions of Islam and Christian holidays and traditions. You can see here the Dome of the Rock, but you have here the important church in Jerusalem. And when we talk about social awareness, also we accepting disability and differences, and this is really, really new. They were not mentioning any photos in the old textbook. They are the woman with chair, wheelchair, or this diversity. They are playing together, or this blind man and other people with disability. But here we have them, and have them many in the textbook. Also, we have culture and gender roles, which mean that we have also the traditional role for women. She can be a mother in home, but or in the field, but also we have the woman here as a doctor and as a teacher. So there is different roles for women, and we are really show that for our students. So we have to mention this, and many, many, many photos you can see in the new textbook dealing with this. I just bring some of them. Self-management, the ability to navigate and shift in the healthy one's thought, emotions, and behavior in order to make decisions and reach goals that benefit oneself and other. For example, this mother here, she just did her duty, and now she brings the education thing for the pupils to go to the school. So she said goodbye to them, and now this is your responsibility to have education. Or this girl that she got, and she took responsibility about her decision, what she wants to make, to study, to behave, and so on. Responsibility and decision making. They mentioned this in very interesting. When I copy the photo, I don't know why there is no content inside. There is content inside, which means maintaining the law. For example, it was written, our right and our duty was inside this three kids, children hold it, responsibility for learning and education. And before the last, we talk about relation skills. We are talking about الحوار وسيلة للتفاهم وحل المشكلات. They are talking about discussion as a means of understanding and solving problems. This means that they give kids to do that during the textbook. So the skill includes student ability for listening actively or communicate effectively with the society, with themselves, with outside. And this is very important, and respectful was in the textbook. And I will finish or summarize how they include this relationship skills. When they talk about relationship skills, they talk about what skills we have to teach the student, and they include the whole frames or the whole definition of the social and emotional learning, which they said the student should be able to know how to behave properly with other in the area of their respect for people and development and promoting values, regardless of the gender, religion, or color, and development understanding of concept and also values in their particular practical life. So this is how they, this was in Arabic written here. I tried to translate it. أن يكون قادرين على معرفة كيف التصرف السليم مع الآخرين في مجالات الحوار، التسامح، احترام الشعوب، تنمية القيم الإنسانية، تعزيزها بغض النظر عن الاختلاف في الرأي أو الدين أو اللون، وتنمية استيعاب المفاهيم والتوجهات الفنية والبدنية والقيمية في حياتهم العملية. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, where's...
Thanks very much, Dr. Samira.
Okay, I like to finish it in Arabic language.
No, that's fine. No problem. I'm sure there'll be a lot of interesting questions, both in English and potentially in Arabic. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are going to have two presentations, the first by Samira and the second by Dr. Stacy Martin. Stacy, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Super. I'll share my screen. And so I just want to note that the screen will be like this because we actually have pre-recorded audio, and I need to work with that. But I will say that the research that I did is not a singular person who did it. And so my research is incredibly collaborative. And so I'd love to read the bios of the co-researchers that are going to present with me. So Gara is a practitioner and educator in the field of development studies. He currently serves as an academic advisor and learning facility for worldwide learning. It's a tertiary level education program which collaborates with universities to offer bachelor's degree programs. He resides in Kakuma refugee camp. And Gara and Daoud are actually in Kakuma refugee camp, and they are online. And we pre-recorded our work because we weren't sure about the broadband, and but they will be here for questions and answers. So Daoud is a young African Leadership Initiative Regional Leadership Center, East Africa alumni. He has immense knowledge of working with refugees and host communities in Dadaab, Kakuma, and in Kenya. He is also one of the co-founders of Kakuma Read, an initiative that relies on volunteer and community-led approaches that support community development, self-reliance, and peace. Currently, he is a lead facilitator for the psychosocial peace-building program implemented by Kakuma Read that aims to equip participants with problem-solving, critical thinking, and creative writing skills. He is interested in education, humanitarian, and research fields. So with that, I'm going to open. I'm really grateful for this opportunity to present because we were late entries. And so thank you very much for allowing us to be a part of this conference. Our presentation is entitled A Retrospective, Where Knowledge and Hope Reside in Kakuma Refugee Camp, Kenya. This title was taken from the first paper that I wrote with the community of Kakuma. And it has been 5 years, and now 3 papers, 4 conferences, presentations later, we want to share how we are applying the psychosocial peace building program in Kakuma. So as an educator, I'll just outline what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the background, and I'll do an overview of the psychosocial peace building education program. I will also talk about my theoretical framework, Critical Hope. We'll talk about the methodology, and then the bulk of this presentation is really Daoud and Gara. And those, again, will be pre-recorded. So I will only be taking about 3 minutes, hopefully, of this time, and they will take the bulk of it because we really want to hear from the people who are actually in the field. Kakuma Refugee Camp was started in 1992, and it's situated in northwestern region of Kenya. It's the 2nd largest refugee camp in Kenya. And this is an aerial photo of Kakuma Refugee Camp. I developed the psychosocial peace building education programs in 2001 in Diepsloot in South Africa. So it started in South Africa, and then it eventually, when communities invited me to implement the program with them, I developed the projects in a school district in Jamaica, a monastery in Nepal, and eventually in Kakuma Refugee Camp. The program is threefold. It is to support the fundamental right of children and youth voice in the classroom, community, and the world around them. It is to promote literacy through the use of storytelling, rewriting a new story, and presenting stories to peers. It also strengthens social and emotional learning. And this is a very art-based. So the core elements of the course is bookmaking, journaling, creating an artifact here, story making and storytelling, and then co-creating solutions. And I know more about the actual program, but I really would love to have more time for Daoud and Gara. So the theoretical critical framework that I'm using is Critical Hope. And this is coming from Ferreri's work, Pedagogy of Hope. Critical hope theoretical frameworks derive from 3 disciplines: philosophy, psychology, and education. Critical hope is a pedagogical tool or practice of teaching that uses a critical theory lens to address unjust systems through meaningful dialogue and empathic responses. And then moving on to the methodology. So I developed a methodology called Speaking for Ourselves Action Research. And this is a research approach where the community identifies the problem, the research is designed around the problem, and the community uses the research to decide and inform them on the steps to take to resolve the problem. The goal of SOAR, which is Speaking for Ourselves Action Research, is to research with and not on participants by involving them as co-researchers, positioning them as authorities of their own experiences, and further developing their awareness of systematic issues to move them to social action. And in many aspects, a part of SOAR is really for them to become researchers themselves. And so our research questions for this actual presentation is, in what ways have you applied what you learned in the psychosocial peace building program professionally and personally? And in what ways has your hope changed in doing the psychosocial peace building program? And so I will move to Daoud and his presentation. And again, Daoud, I've noticed that he is actually online and in with us. So for questions and answers, he'll definitely, hopefully, be able to have enough bandwidth. Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daoud Otsame, and I'm a Somali refugee based in Kenya. I'm one of the co-founders of Kakuma Read Initiative, a refugee-led organization currently registered as a community-based organization in Turkana County, Kenya. I will be speaking from a point of privilege because I have been part of the psychosocial peace building education program that was conducted by Dr. Stacy Martin in Kakuma Refugee Camp, Kenya, back in 2017-2018. And after the training, co-researching, co-facilitating, and co-authoring a book chapter titled Kakuma Refugee Camp, Where Knowledge and Hope Resides. It is with a great honor that I am participating in this retrospective session alongside Dr. Zesi and Master Gerald. By the time Dr. Stacy has left the camp and the research was concluded, we had a few resources to continue implementing with the research or the workshops. Together with other co-facilitators from the camp who were part of the research, we initiated on voluntary basis weekend-based workshops that targeted after-school programs and community halls that community learners and students would attend. And after a couple of years, I have integrated the initiative into Kakuma Read community-based organization activities where I currently lead as a facilitator. During the session, you might see participants using different skills within a session. For instance, interpersonal communication, teamwork, and non-verbal communications. But this might result differences, and you might see one of the participants might be experiencing cross-cultural communication issues. And in this process, as a facilitator, we have to come in and facilitate by mitigating issues that could cause differences within a communication, within a teamwork, and enable avenues where collaboration, teamwork could flourish. By leading example, I have made many friends and focused on scaling up my reach as a leader by serving diverse communities and impacting lives. I co-facilitated sessions that speak to resilience, represent pain, depict hope, and together we contributed to co-creating a more peaceful and just communities within our neighborhood. Interestingly, knowledge helped me to get opportunities like the Young African Leadership Initiative program, where I have completed the civic leadership and training of trainer program before winning the 2023 Civic Leadership Award offered by the center. I really felt humbled as my efforts and my leadership through Kakuma Read has been recognized. Before I conclude, I would like to recommend this program to different places that are either hosting refugees, protracted in nature, or have displaced communities, as this program will not only give them the understanding of life's unprecedented challenge, but also will give the healing they need as they seek refuge in what will become their homes, but internationally recognized as refugee camps. Thank you very much.
And so right now we'll transfer, we'll move on to Gara's presentation.
My part is a kind of reflection on the art-based psychosocial peace-building educational activity that I participated in during Dr. Stacy's dissertation research. I participated in three activities: the doll making, storytelling, and diary writing. I used the storytelling and doll making exercise in my community and business development course modules, which are related to peace, leadership, and creativity. The art part, the doll making part, and the associated exercise has helped me and the participants to understand how undesirable thoughts and associated emotions can be disrupted and switch to pleasant and positive feelings and energy, even if it seems temporary. The other benefit of the exercise was their impact in strengthening our relationship among each other, so that we can easily listen each other, talk each other, and positively, especially positively comment each other, and being open to creativity. I also used the storytelling facilitation skills that I learned in this exercise to my own research, which I conducted in the year 2019. The engagement has also positive impact in my personal life. As a person who often stays alone and wonders a lot, managing my thoughts and associated emotions has been among my challenges. This simple art exercise, which is a doll making, is a very good thought disruptive technique. It helped me to easily switch from one thought to another, and also listen and try to adjust my feelings consciously. I use my pillow, plate, or anything around to have fun with the recurring thoughts, so that they go away quickly with a little impact or trace in me. And the storytelling also have similar effects in me. And the exercise I did during the training has made me realize that stories I tell have many versions, and they are affected by situations, the moods, and the external factors that interfere with my day-to-day activity. And now I try to create a distance between my stories and any possible realities that may exist. The other lesson I got is related to understanding hope. It is difficult to have a natural type of hope that can be followed through without losing our agency, which I think is an important point. Since the camp context leads us to the transfer of agency, a different type of hope emerges, which is the induced type of hope that a person cannot achieve by his or her own effort. Such an induced type of hope is mostly used as a toolkit to get things done, or to shape behaviors toward the desirable, or to calm one down, or as one researcher puts it, as an ordering mechanism. Such induced type of hope is not individual specific. Mostly is attached to either sustaining life or escaping encampment. Any effort to realize such type of hope automatically leads to a complex form of struggle and competition to find different type of agents, advocates, or supporters. So for the majority, such type of hope leads to despair ultimately. A few creative refugees have maneuvered the mix of the two forms of hope, the natural and induced ones, and created a different form of hope, which I may call it resilient hope. And relatively, they met their goals. Of course, in such cases, ethical and moral responsibilities are always at stake. On the contrary, the research promotes a different type of hope, a critical hope, which guides to have a clear path, strategy, and motivation towards meeting a goal. I found this practically challenging in the camp context, since our agency and personal responsibilities have been eroded over time. It's difficult to take those responsibilities. And also, strategies that could help us maneuver a complex structural barriers demands a collective effort, which ultimately leads us to organizations. I understand that camp education could be seen as a protective factor and hope at all levels. But considering induced type of hope as a protective factor has been tested over time, and it has shown how it quickly turns to despair, and always vulnerability remains after completion. As a result of having such thinking of hope, I tried to be in a safe place, limiting myself from focusing on goals and only appreciating the process. In such a place, be it a dream, a fantasy, or any type, doesn't matter so long as it comes from within me and fills out the void and protects me from going to the past. It helps me to move on. Such a hope cannot be inside, it is false. Actually, hope could only be false if it is the induced type and cannot be fulfilled. However, in general, whenever I discuss with my students, I keep telling them to think about the future, to have a hope and fill the void. I hope also to continue writing about hope. Thank you.
And so I, in conclusion, wanted to share the chapter that was 5 years ago that we wrote all together. And you'll see that there's 5 different languages. This is kind of a huge act for academia to actually have different languages in one article, but it's very important for me as an academic to make sure that the languages that are used in the communities, that they can see themselves as researchers and not as objects of research. And so that's, in conclusion, is that Kakuma refugee camp, there is hope and knowledge in Kakuma refugee camp, and we'll hear from Daoud and Gara, hopefully, while we're doing the question and answers. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stacy. Fascinating presentation. Really interesting to also hear the voices of your colleagues. Appreciate very much that you integrate them into the presentation. Provides a lot more kind of three-dimensional, or at least a multi-dimension sense of some of the people that you are interacting with, and their thoughts and experiences and the knowledge they bring to the topic. Very interesting. So we have time now for some questions. I've received through the chat box a few questions, first for Dr. Samira. And I'm going to begin with one question that was asked here by one of the colleagues, not sure their name. He or she writes, "It's interesting to sensitize children about accepting diversity, but sometimes we deal with parents that don't accept this diversity. Do you think that we have to engage parents in some programs about this subject of some of the values that are being embedded in the post-2018 Palestinian textbooks?"
You want me to answer immediately?
Yeah.
Okay. I agree with her that parents is very, very important to integrate when they build the content of the children. But unfortunately, until today, the Palestinian textbook, they didn't integrate any parents in the committee. When I did the study, and since 10 years I'm really doing study of analysis of textbook in Palestinian National Authority, they start to really to emphasize and focus on diversity, just what I mentioned, the second period of the textbook, which started in 2018. And here they didn't even thought about a real thought about diversity. They are starting to fit their own textbook also to the global relationship, to the aims of the social emotional learning and other thing. And here they start the first step, which is positive in my opinion, because they start really to mention many other many things that wasn't in the Palestinian textbook in before. Like, one of them is diversity, but it's a very good point to offer it for them. But unfortunately, the parents is not part of writing the textbook and the curricula. I agree with you; they have to do it, but they are not until today. I don't know if I answered.
I think you did. There's also a question here in Arabic by Dr. Naji. Maybe you would like to ask it. If he isn't there, I've translated the question into English. I guess, Samira, you can see it probably in the chat box, can you?
1 minute.
It was submitted around 1:04. The translation I have, it says, the tendency is for Palestinian children to learn the values of dialogue, tolerance, and acceptance of others. But does the context of occupation in which they live and the immoral war and genocide to which they are exposed help in consolidating these noble values? And how can the civilized world contribute to finding the appropriate solution to this situation?
You know, Dr. Naji, is really very exciting and important question what you ask now. But you know, I don't think when the Palestinian write the textbook in 2018, 17, the war was the Gaza war. What we have now and what we see now, it was there. I guess they still have really wish and a hope. As they mentioned to me in the interviews, not in the textbook, it wasn't written, but they said, but it was kind of disappointed of what's going on, and then ongoing conflict between the two nations, the two states. There is no Palestinian state. I wish it, but I don't know to answer this question clearly. But diversity and these universal values is very, very important to keep it. And I wish and I hope that they still believe in it, you know, because no way if we are losing the hope for, as Dr. Before me, my colleague Martin mentioned, also hope is very, very important when we write the content, because the textbook, when we create textbook, it should be like 5 years, 6 years, and not immediately we change textbooks. So it's a process, and then it's really, you have it in your mind, and you know what to think about the other. Diversity, human rights, gender equality in the inside the Palestinian society and outside the Palestinian society, it's very important. I hope and wish, as a Palestinian living in the state of Israel, that the Palestinian in the West Bank and Gaza still believe in this, although I don't expect from them now to do that, you know. I know that situation is terrible now, and if you are mention this to them, it's a really horrible time. But I guess this is important to have these values for the future, and I hope the future will be good.
Thanks very much, Samira. Flavia, I see your hand is up. Do you have a question for Dr. Samira or for Dr. Martin?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, my question relates to both, but since we are talking about one representation, so representation has to do with identity, how people identify themselves in the case of the Palestinians, and also the issue of identity, and also refugees in Kenya, refugees anywhere. But the combination of identity, geography, and displacement. Our identities sometimes start from a place of birth or our cultures, where you're coming from. And people experience displacement at very different levels, either by their own choice or without the choice, or when they are in an occupied territory. So they're not displaced from their own land, but they're displaced from a place of power, of autonomy. So, but that plays not only in the case of the Palestinians, but in many other places, refugees, another thing. I worked with minority populations in the US, and many of them were migrants from different countries, many of them from Latin America, who had been in the US for the longest time. So they experience all situations that people who are displaced experience as well, even though they're not refugees, but a sense of the lack of power and autonomy. And when we talk about the pedagogy of hope, what I learned through my own research using the photodialogo that uses pictures and storytelling, people's memories to build like from where they're coming to where they want to be. But we cannot have hope until people find within themselves resilience, because there are many situations that are hopeless, mostly in conflict affected areas. So we cannot just ask people to be hopeful and happy when the situation around them is not giving them any signs of hope. So with the populations I worked with who experienced like mental health issues, we started sometimes from very dark places. And many of the other professions at the community base where I was working was saying, why this stuff is so dark? And I said, that's where they are now. And at the end, I remember when I had to leave because I was moving to a different area, and I told them that I'm leaving, and the women in the group said that you can go. We don't need you anymore. We know what we're doing. We're going to continue with this group. It was a weekly meeting that we had with this group of women, and they continue. And the women who, some of them could not read and write, they felt so empowered by their own resiliency. They realized the power of themselves, like all the things they went through, and they're still alive. And that's what Freddie talks about, the pedagogy of hope. But that is also another book, The Meaning of Life, by, oh my gosh, now I forgot his name. But he was dealing with people who, Holocaust survivors. And the first question he asked their patients was like, why haven't you not killed yourself yet? So ask yourself that situation when you're very desperate. So even when people are very desperate, why did you kill themselves? So that is that hope that's somehow there, or the issue of resiliency. So how, and that's for both of you, Samira, Stacy, and your team as well, Sabah Wanaksan, for the Somali person, how do we integrate that into a learning experience? How do you build that resiliency, the sense of hope, even in very daring situations, like, conflict affected areas and refugee camps, or people who are displaced in one way or another? How you create that sense of identity, hope, and in the present moment, and also the images, like in textbooks or anything that you do, like how you use the arts-based tools in terms of representation of that identity.
Stacy, I think I'm going to ask you to respond first, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm actually going to punt it to Daoud and Gara in just a second, but I think Gara said to me, which is very resonates, the comment about we don't need you anymore. When I developed the program in Kakuma refugee camp, Gara said, we've got it. We've got it taken care of. And I think that's one of the things that when you look at critical hope, it's hope with action. It's not just hope. Because I think just hope is can be incredibly lead to a lot of despair. And I think oftentimes in these refugee camps, we, as the UN, NGOs, create a lot of manufactured hope. And I think that's also something that we need to be very careful about. But I would like to hear from Daoud and Gara of kind of the things that have created that space of hope in Kakuma refugee camp. And Gara's done a number of articles along with Princeton and University of Exeter, and Daoud has started his own refugee-led organization, which is a huge lift. And so those are the kinds of things that are actionable that offer this space. So Gara, I don't know, and Daoud, are you able to, do you have enough bandwidth in order to answer those questions?
Thank you, Stacy. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. This is Gera from Alpha. Yes, I have to say something about identity first. I like the way you expressed identity. Whenever I think of my own identity, I see the fracture of it, because my identity in different ways is given to somebody else. And so in the process I lose my agency, my power. So whenever we think of identity in such environment, we cannot say that we have that full sovereignty to try whatever we want. That is one thing. Of course, we can create meaning in different ways. I know when Franco, the Holocaust survivor, when he talked about meaning, because that was the thing that made him survive. And of course, we can also create meaning with the space that we have, and we are creating. That's why we are hoping whatever is taking us tomorrow. And in everything that we can hope, just to give one example, we are given rations monthly. So will it come? And we hope for that. So hoping the food is going to be given is one thing. And to see it tomorrow is also part of hope. But the critical hope that we learned from Stacey is much deeper than the normal talk that we are talking about. The critical hope demands to see a path, a clear path, and to have some strategy and follow through that path with motivation and courage. To do so, there are so many barriers. We don't have the power. That's why we become crippled. So I can only say in that way, and that brings sooner or later an emotional package that leads us to hopelessness. So in the short run, we can create hope. We can try and we can survive. And the type of life that we remain with is what Adam Bean called it the bare life. A life without potentialities, a life without possibilities. That's possible. If that's what life means. But if the situation allows, we have so many potentials, as Dawood already mentioned. You can do something meaningful, but there are so many things along the way. And most of these things are related to the power agencies that we need to have. Let me give it back to Dawood.
Daoud, do you have a brief comment that you would like to make?
Thank you. Thank you everyone who is participating in this conference, and I'm very glad to be here with you again. As Mr. Gera and Stacey has already discussed, hope in a place like a Kakuma or a refugee camp or in times of crisis, it is always invisible. But after a long time, after a long period of years, especially if you have been living or been in displacement for about 30 years, at the very end, you will come to the conclusion that there's no more time left to wait. So the best thing to do is
We may have lost him here. Can everyone hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you. So if your role is about teaching and helping the community, you go for that role. For instance, in my case, I was privileged to live around and with people like Mr. Guerra, who is also participating in this conference presentation, and he is there for Kakum refugee young people, for the students, and he's someone whom we look up to, learn from, and from my initiative, Kakuma Read, which has been registered as a community-based organization in Turkana County. It's another way of giving back to the community as a young man, as a refugee, and as someone who have been given much while still being in refugee camp. So that's what gives me hope. From identity, we hold to it that we have been displaced, that we are still been living with everything related to whether it's psychological, whether it is emotional, of displacement, of separating with your loved ones. But we hold on to the way of helping to the communities and knowing that one day we will go back to our home country. Thank you so much.
So I think we're going to have to end it there, partly because I've just learned that the length of the video recording of our third speaker is going to take us very close to the end time of this session. So I do apologize. I know that there were some other questions here, and perhaps they could be sent to the presenters and they could respond in a different way, or we can continue this after we've also heard the third recording. So first of all, let me thank both Samira and Stacy and her colleagues, Dawood and Jarrah, for their very interesting comments and presentations. And I'd like to ask Dr. Naji if he can put up the recording of our third presenter. This is Professor Regis Mallet, who is a very distinguished professor in France. I'm not going to read his entire biography, but he had a long and distinguished career, especially in the area of comparative education. Dr. Naji, can you put up his recording at this point? Okay, I think we can see it.
Bien, bonjour à toutes et tous. Merci beaucoup pour cette invitation.
Bien, bonjour à toutes et tous. Merci beaucoup pour cette invitation. La question du développement des compétences sociales et émotionnelles par l'éducation est un sujet tout à fait intéressant et même central, mais qui recouvre toute une série d'enjeux que je vais me contenter dans ce petit exposé de dénoncer en espérant être utile pour la discussion et en me gardant bien sûr de répondre d'une façon normative ou en termes de recommandations, mais simplement pour prendre la mesure de ce que ces objectifs ne peuvent s'accommoder d'une seule perspective programmatique ou même curriculaire qui consisterait par exemple à sortir une telle ambition de cours qui serait dédié au développement de ces compétences, parce que cela, en réalité, implique une approche raisonnée, étayée par des recherches, des dimensions à la fois politiques, épistémiques, pédagogiques et écologiques de la question. Sur le fond, d'abord, les enjeux sont énormes. Et au-delà de la seule question du développement de compétences socio-émotionnelles, eh bien, la question renvoie à la capacité de nos écoles, de l'éducation scolaire, formelle, à préparer à la vie. Et donc, il y a effectivement, a priori, beaucoup de raisons qui plaident pour leur développement, notamment l'intérêt qu'il peut y avoir à préparer les enfants et les jeunes à la complexité du monde qui les attend, dans lequel ils sont déjà d'ailleurs, à des enjeux aussi de coexistence, de vivre en société et en paix, de pouvoir se situer et s'adapter à des environnements changeants. Donc ça, évidemment, cela plaide pour travailler justement à l'école, dans ce contexte, dans cette institution un peu protectrice finalement, sur ces questions fondamentales. Mais il y a aussi beaucoup d'obstacles endogènes qui sont à la fois politiques et épistémiques. Donc, et c'est le premier point sur lequel je veux partir, c'est-à-dire qu'on ne peut pas véritablement s'engager dans ces questions-là sans interroger finalement le sens de l'école et aussi son histoire, ses fondations. On sait par exemple que beaucoup d'écoles nationales se sont construites sur une distinction, voire une opposition entre le connaître et l'éprouver, entre le savoir et le sensible, sans même parler de la séparation instituée entre le public et le privé, avec également dans le programme institutionnel de l'école une tâche quasiment assumée de domestication, d'acculturation par l'école à une certaine forme de vie qui est assez, sinon indifférente, en tout cas peu sensible aux émotions des sujets qu'elle reçoit. Hein. Bon. Donc il y a ce premier élément. Ensuite, il y a toute une série d'acteurs des systèmes éducatifs qui relèvent de ce qu'on pourrait appeler des noosphères. Ils existent, ils se déploient aussi bien autour des savoirs scolaires, hein, une longue histoire qui a produit l'école dans certains contextes nationaux complètement disciplinaro-centrés, tenant à l'école, à l'écart au fond de l'école, le corps des élèves, leur émoi, au profit justement de l'élève, ce sujet connaissant ou se construisant, même si la notion d'élève n'est évidemment pas restrictive à la question des savoirs, elle est déjà une manière de poser une coupure entre l'enfant qui rentre et l'élève qui est accueilli ou qui est invité à se développer comme tel. Donc là, ce sont des décennies de construction, à la fois institutionnelle, sociale, culturelle et politique, qui donc invitent à la prudence. Et donc oui, promouvoir à l'école les compétences sociales et émotionnelles, telles que la gestion des émotions, le renforcement aussi de la résilience et la prise en compte de l'altérité, ce sont des choses extrêmement importantes. Mais encore faut-il s'interroger sur cela et sur même la disposition ou l'inclination de certains systèmes éducatifs à accueillir ce projet. Dans le cadre d'un précédent colloque de la Macken, sur la base notamment d'études comparatives sur la question du bien-être, et notamment sur la base d'exemples un peu illustratifs, et je pense aussi à des rapports importants qui ont été produits par l'UNICEF sur ces questions, on avait souligné combien il était important précisément pour le bien-être des individus dans l'école, qu'il s'agisse des élèves ou des enseignants ou des personnels d'éducation au sens large, une forme de reconnaissance et de prise en charge aussi, de prise en compte par l'institution de leur vécu, de leur expérience. Parfois même, on avait observé comment des élèves en difficulté scolaire pouvaient rebondir, si je peux dire, à partir du moment où il y avait une forme de reconnaissance de leurs difficultés, de leur malaise, de leur mal-être. Et tout cela avait des effets non seulement sur les individus, mais sur les collectifs. Et savez-vous que, en effet, dans certains contextes nationaux, à commencer par le nôtre, la France, la question même que l'école concourt au bien-être des jeunes ou des moins jeunes d'ailleurs n'est pas consensuelle et même est parfois suspecte dans l'esprit de beaucoup. Donc il y avait évidemment des enjeux à la fois politiques, socio-culturels, institutionnels qui sont extrêmement importants. Un autre élément que je voulais souligner sur ce plan,